Hello and welcome to this session on how to use TEL to create knowledge checks to support student learning. With myself, Mike Wilson, Senior Lecturer from ACDev, and my good friend Tom Langston, Educational Technologist from Technology Enhanced Learning. Tale of two halves really. I'll take the first bit of the session, which will be really around asynchronous knowledge check activities. These support the Moodle template. If you've been to the Moodle template session, which we're running this week, there's another couple of sessions running and recordings available. We talk about the importance of knowledge check activities. And the asynchronous ones I'm going to cover sit very well online alongside the teaching resources. That in a bit more detail in a second. And Tom's are really so mine are asynchronous. Tom's are really synchronous, really good for using within a live session with students. Some of them can be used asynchronously, but they're predominantly used for synchronous stuff. So before we jump into anything, the aims of the session are to understand the knowledge of understand the value of knowledge checks within a flipped learning context, understands which knowledge check activities are self-marking, explore beginner, intermediate and advanced knowledge checks, and finally to be able to create a simple knowledge check activity. So let's get that first one out of the way to start with. So the Moodle template that we've come up with, we've got a whole session which goes into the detail of how that was done. But the first section in any given week in a flipped delivery mechanism is dedicated to guided self-study from students. Normally this is a set of recorded lecture materials or talk sessions, maybe some core reading, along with a knowledge check activity. And the knowledge check really is to help you test the students' knowledge to ensure A, they've actually watched the lecture materials, B, they've understood it and to what degree, and finally to highlight any areas that students have struggled with that could do with recapping in the group collaboration session. So when you're live with students face to face, online, or in a face to face session, which are those sections that could possibly do with reaffirming with students. So I'm going to take you through 3 different ways of doing that. This one is very simple. So it's using the Moodle forum activity. And basically we're just going to ask that open question. What area did you struggle with most in this week's materials? So if I'll pinch presenting rights from Tom. Oh, thanks, mate. So in front of me, I've got my sandbox course. So you've got a link in the chat. If you'd like to follow along as we go, please feel free to do that. I'm just going to add to start with by pressing the Add Activity or Resource button with editing switched on. I'm going to show you. So we've got the general forum activity, but I'm going to use the advanced forum today because it's got a few extra bits of functionality that are really useful. So if I just add an advanced forum, and I'm just going to call this one knowledge check. You can make this nice and friendly. The description here is what the students see and kind of sets the scene. So please reply below with the area you struggled with most this week. What could do with recapping? I'm going to choose each person posts one discussion. So each person gets their own thread to post that. It keeps it quite nice and organised, and people can reply to those. So I could just press save there, and that's all I need to do. It gives students a forum where they can let you know what they'd like recapping potentially. But if I pop open post options, I've got 2 options that I'm going to check as well. Allow marking as substantive And that means that if students clarify points for other students, so if I struggled with a formula that was covered in the materials, and another student comes in and says, "Oh, actually, this is where you're going wrong. This is how you should do it." I can mark that and say, "Actually, yes, that is a correct clarification of that point." So that's quite useful. Also, you may have students that the tools we use. Some of these are face-to-face tools, and some of them are online text-based. But students still might feel a little bit shy about replying on a forum, especially when they have to admit they don't understand something, they don't get it. So this, in the advanced forum, you can allow anonymous posting. So students can flag what they had a problem with without kind of having to admit it with their face attached to it. So I'm going to allow anonymous posting there, and I'm going to press save and display. That's it. It's very, very straightforward. Students come here, they read the description, press add new discussion, and then they post their area that they felt they could do with some help on. They can reveal themselves if they want, tick that box, but the anonymous posting is quite useful. Okay, so that's it. That's the first one. Nice and easy. A forum activity can be very quickly and easily used to establish students' knowledge or where they're struggling. Okay, from the slides, Tom. Oh, actually, tell you what, I'll put my slides on the screen. That's probably the best way to do it. Did you want people to go into VBox now, Tom? Or was it a bit later? Looks like a bit later. Okay. Right, so I will stop sharing that screen, and I'm going to share another screen because, so from there, from here. Okay, so from current slide, and I'm going to share that with you. It says share content, and I'm going to share this screen here. Okay, so don't worry if you don't if you don't get this link down. This is a link to one of our support sites which we developed back in March to help people that were having to teach online very quickly. It's called the Learning Tools site, and I'll drop it in the chat at the end. But it has step-by-step guides to all the tools that we support via TEL and AcDev. So the Moodle tool is a Moodle forum, and the advanced forum is covered on that page. So as we say, this is a beginner tool. So pick the tool that you feel most comfortable with. Jump in at any point. You can always change at a later date, but that's very much a beginner one. Another good beginner tool is Padlet, and you may have seen this in some of our other sessions. It's very, very good as an icebreaker activity for summarising students' knowledge. I'm not going to go into it because Andy Clegg is offering 2 sessions on this later in the week. So Thursday 4 to 5 and Friday 9 till 10. And we'll go into loads of different examples that you can use Padlet for. So I'd really encourage you to go along to those sessions. Again, it's a beginner difficulty to it from a teaching point of view, and we do now have a site license for it. So that's really good. The next one I'm going to cover is Google Forms. I'm going to cover the quiz as well in Moodle, which is quite similar to Google Forms, but I've kind of badged Google Forms as intermediate because it's very, very simple to create quiz-based multiple choice questions in Google Forms now. It's relatively new over the last couple of years. So I'm going to jump into a browser. And I'm going to go, you can't see this, but I'll be back in a second to show you. And I'm going to share that one. Okay, so I have gone to forms.google.com. You can also get it from Google Drive as well from the drop down. So when I'm in Forms, at the top of my page, I have this option, a blank quiz. So I'll press that one. And And I've put this as intermediate because it's so easy. Google are very good at stripping down their interface, so it's very easy to understand. So I'm going to ask a number of multiple choice questions just to establish students' knowledge on the key topics that I covered. So let's say this is a politics module. I'm going to ask, when is the next US election? And I'll just put my options in here. So we've got November 3rd, 2020, November 4th, 2020, and I'm just going to go 3 options this time. I mean, traditionally we go for 4 options, but I think 3 will be able to illustrate it. So there are my options. You can add images to those as well if you want to, just to make it a bit more media rich. All I need to do now is press the answer key to specify the points. We'll say this one's out of, we'll say you get 5 points for getting this right. And we need to identify the correct answer, which is that one. Press done, and that's a question done. That's under a minute to create a question. It's very, very straightforward to do those. I could keep going. I could add more multiple choice questions with the add question button here. But if you imagine I've done 4 or 5 of these just to establish knowledge in the key areas for my talk materials, I'm then going to switch multiple choice to paragraph. And I'm going to leave an open type question similar to what I left in the forum. So which area, which topic did you find most challenging in this week's materials? So I'm not going to put a point allocate to this. So it's really just for me to get an idea of where students struggle most, so I can recap, as I said before. So that I'll leave that one as is. As I say, kind of 4 or 5 questions, multiple choice, and an open question would be really useful. Once I'm finished, I can give it a name. So knowledge check, or let's go weekly knowledge check. And then all I need to do is send it. So press send. I'd get that link, and then I can post that in Moodle within one of the sections or as an activity really easily. So there you go. A few minutes, and I've created a very simple multiple choice knowledge check. We had a question yesterday about why we wouldn't just use the Moodle quiz instead of Google Forms, and it's really the simplicity of it. It's for multiple choice questions, forms are very, very straightforward. As you see, it's taken me a few minutes to create that and make it available to students. I'm now going to show you how you can do something similar using the Moodle quiz, and I've badged this. When we go back to the slides, you'll see that I've badged it up as advanced. And the reason I've badged the quiz up as advanced is it is a much more powerful tool than Google Forms. We've got about 15 different question types within Moodle available to you. Drag and drop text into sentences, place markers on images, use formulas with variables, so students get completely different questions each time. It's a really sophisticated tool, but with that sophistication, you get a high degree of complexity. So there's more things for you to bear in mind. For most people, a multiple choice question will be fine just to establish knowledge, but you might want to prepare students for the type of questions they'll get in the exam at the end of the year. It's a really good idea to get students used to using a quiz if they're going to do a quiz-based exam at the end of the year. So I'll now create a Moodle quiz to show you how that works. So back to our sandbox course, add an activity or resource, and this time I'm going to scroll down and press quiz. Press the add button there. Just to get started, again, it's a knowledge check. Knowledge check. I could put a full description of what we're doing and just kind of set the scene for it. I'm just going to go through the functional steps this time though. I'm going to set a grade this time though. I'm going to say that students need to get 2 points to pass out of possible. So out of possible 10, say. And I'll tell you why when I come back to this at the end. So I'll save and display that quiz. So the construct of my quiz, the container is created. I just need to add some questions now. So I'll press edit quiz, and then I'll have be able to add a new question. I can add questions from a question bank if I've already got those. You may have those. The quiz is very good in that if you have any Word documents full of multiple choice questions, you can use something called the Aitken format to import those directly into a quiz. So you don't have to redo the work. So it's got some extra features to it. I'm just going to create one from scratch this time though. And as I say, here are your 15, 18 different question types. So lots and lots of different things you can do. You can really make something really interactive, really test students' knowledge. So yeah, drag and drop onto image markers, all sorts of different things, mathematical formulas. But at this point, we're just going to do the same process as we did for the Google Forms. I'll use a multiple choice question. So if I add that one in now, I'm adding my multiple choice question. The question name is just a label, so you can find it. Students won't see this, but it's worth making it quite descriptive. If you put question 1, it's going to be hard to find when you've added a lot more questions. So where's my examples? Here they are. Got a lot of post-it note. So I'm going to call this one cataracts A, and I'm going to say which of these descriptions describes cataracts. I'll scroll down. I'm not going to give feedback at this point, but it's worth pointing out that another benefit to the Moodle quiz is it's a very, very good formative tool, as you can give general feedback for each answer, but also you can give feedback if students select the wrong answer. So if you have a distractor that is very, very close to the correct answer, you can point out why it is wrong and what the difference is between that and the correct answer. These feedback boxes that you can see here are really valuable. It does take time to create those. It's a little bit time consuming, but it is a very, very good tool for students it's a learning tool as much as it is a testing tool.
And a good bit with the Moodle quiz, sorry Mike to interrupt,
that's right,
is that idea that, like Mike's doing, he's creating this question now, but as he mentioned, you can import and export those questions. So once they're created in the Moodle format, they're not then lost to only being a one-use only question. They sit in the question bank, which again goes to that bit of maybe structuring how you name your questions to find things later on. But you can use these in multiple different sort of areas and for different scenarios depending on what you're teaching.
And you can share them with colleagues as well. We can enable you to share question banks across Moodle courses, as we do in some computing subjects. So you can create questions which you can then share. So for a knowledge check, when I create, I'm going to create an open question after this. You don't need to create it each time; it's already created. You're just reusing it each time. It's quite efficient. So I'm going to put my distractors in now. Then, so a cataract is clouding of the lens, which results in blurred vision. I know this is true because I used to have them, and I'm going to go grade 100%. So that indicates that is the correct answer. You can have partials as well. So if you're partially correct, you can leave feedback that it's partially correct and leave a partial mark. But for this instance, there'll be a definitively correct answer and 2 wrong ones, which will be weakening of the optic nerve, resulting in poor vision, and beginning. And finally, we're going to go for tunnel vision. Tunnel vision worsening over time. Okay, so those two are wrong, so we don't have to change those at all. 100% next to option 1, and I'm going to press save at the bottom. So that question's finished. So the good thing about this is a self-marking question, as with the Google Forms multiple choice, because you specify what the right answer is. When students come to answer them, they'll be marked automatically for you. So I could repeat this process for a number of questions. I'm going to change that point to 2, just so the points add up. You can let's use an enter. 2. Gosh. I'm going to add in the same way as I added the open question previously. I'll just show you how to do that. A new question, and it's going to be an essay question. So press essay and press add. This is the equivalent of a paragraph within Google Forms. So this is just the label. What did you struggle with? Again, the most. There we go. This isn't going to be marked. I could, if I wanted to, change that to a 0, because there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just to provide a space for students to feed back in. So that's all I need to do. I can adjust the size of the box if I want to, and press save changes. And that's it. That's my quiz ready to go. I can create some more questions. I can import them from other places. I can get really complex with it if I want to. But that's it. The power of the Moodle quiz is that it's got such a variety of question types. You can really do some kind of high-level assessment in it. But another advantage over Google Forms is because it's created in Moodle, you can tie it to other activities. So if you had a problem with engagement with students in that they weren't reading, you've looked at the course participation report on Moodle. So you can see per activity a yes or no next to whether students have viewed certain things. So after a couple of weeks, you can see that students aren't viewing your recorded lecture materials, or they are giving a cursory look. They're skipping the knowledge check and just turning up to the weekly collaboration session, which is in this instance delivered by WebEx. And what happens is you get quite stunted discussion because half the students don't understand the materials and relying on other students to fill the gaps. What you can do is you can mandate that knowledge check is an entry point for the weekly discussion session. So I'm not going to let you into the weekly collaboration session unless you've passed the knowledge check to a certain degree. It doesn't have to be a high level. It could just be answering 1 or 2 questions correctly, and there could be low-hanging fruit questions, but it will check that students have attempted the materials and the knowledge check before they've accessed the discussion. I'll briefly show you how to do that and then hand over to Tom. So if I edit the settings for the knowledge check, down here in one of the bottom sections, I can restrict access. So I can say I'll add a restriction that means I'm in the wrong place. I've done it in the wrong place. Apologies for this. I should access to the weekly collaboration session. If I edit that one, so that's our weekly live meetup where we have a discussion. You can't access this. Under restrict access, add a restriction that says you can't access this discussion unless you've completed the knowledge check with a pass mark. And the pass mark we set was 2 points, so it's quite low. You don't have to do this. It's just a tactic that might engage some of your students to kind of realise that they have to do these things and to have a worthwhile discussion. So again, that's another value of that's in tentacles. That's another value. This is the last one. I think I'm on the wrong one because they call the same thing, which is handy. Students must match the following: activity completion, knowledge-based quiz. You must Must be complete with pass mark. Okay, we'll just mark as completed. Save and return to course. But yeah, you don't have to do this. It's just a tactic that you could use. You can make sure they have to complete this before they can access this. Another useful feature. So that's the end of the asynchronous activities. We'll link you to the guides at the end of the session, but now I'll hand over to Tom, who will talk more about the synchronous activities.
Thank you very much. I'll share my screen again. There's a few questions I've attempted to answer, Mike, through the through the chat, but you may have especially the one on reporting, what can be done with reporting in Moodle. You might be able to answer that slightly better than I can.
Yes.
I've put these slides up, which when we started this, I kind of missed over this as Mike was talking about it, but I think it fits quite nicely here again from some of those questions that have been posed, which is that idea where you're, again, like Mike's just been talking about, you're checking what they've done, you're being able to sort of make sure that they've grasped all these key concepts, and where you may need to help with recapping and what is the best way to recap that. And that was one from Sarah from earlier, which is, when's the best time for students to complete these knowledge checks, after the talk lecture or during the talk lecture? So again, depending on what you're trying to achieve, will depend on how you'd fit that in here. So I'm going to talk through a few other ways of checking knowledge, both synchronously and asynchronously. And some, like Nearpod, for instance, could be used in both ways. So I'm not going to go into the back end of Nearpod and show you all that today. It's a bit much for the time frame that we have. But just to kind of highlight from the animated GIF that you should hopefully be able to see, and again, we'll share these slides around later as well, is Nearpod, for those that don't know, is an audience response system. However, the reason this one differs from many other audience response systems is you kind of use it to build your entire presentation with inside of it. So you can drag and drop in PowerPoint slides, you can create it in Google Slides, and then pull it through to Nearpod. And again, if you want help with that kind of stuff after these sort of sessions, please do ask. But what you can do is use it as live, as me and Mike would have been doing now, to do a presentation and add activities within that. So you could add short little questions, quizzes, activities that, again, while you're teaching, bring you back that kind of little knowledge check to make sure that they're engaged, whether they're sat in a traditional classroom with you, and almost even more so now. Obviously, we have 15 of you here today, so again, thank you for turning up. But when you're presenting, as I'm sure you found already from the end of term, it's a very, very different experience, because you don't, even though you see names in the participant box, what you don't have is any kind of feedback of engagement. You don't see how many people are genuinely listening to you. What these kind of things do, using things like Nearpod, allow you to do that live. You can pose a little question, maybe at the beginning, pose one at the middle, pose one at the end. What I'd also sort of advocate here is restraint. While I am a massive sort of fan of using audience response and think it has a lot of value within teaching, I also appreciate that if you throw everything at it per lecture, it's going to be too much for anyone to take in, and people will burn out in a very sort of very quick way, trying to do too many activities. I don't know about what it's been like for everyone that's attended this week, but it's the same sort of thing for us, where we've been presenting all week and suddenly your brain is just overstimulated with what you're doing. And again, I appreciate that many of you have done this sort of stuff for a lot longer than myself. And so firstly, kudos to you. What I've also got, though, which is in that little animated GIF, is I've used Nearpod to create what's called a student-paced activity. And what I've been able to do is make a slide, I've uploaded a PDF, then I've added an open-ended question, which you are now also able to use with a microphone to record sort of speech, I've added in a Flipgrid assessment, a video, and then that's the end of that little kind of presentation. So it's not really a full presentation like we'd be doing today, but what it allows the student to do is work through that and again do some little knowledge checks. Now, unlike Mike's, where he was able to get sort of scores within the Moodle quiz to make that sort of unhide and show other resources from achieving that, Nearpod is only embedded in. There is no, at the moment, sort of integration within that. So at the moment, they do it, but you have no real way of checking it inside of Moodle. It does, however, in the back end of Nearpod, have an option to view what people have put. And so it does track the data. It is there. You can sort of check who has partaken in the activity. What you don't have is that link back to Moodle for that to, again, hide resources, as Mike was talking about. The little screenshots I've posted around the side are that idea of a start, stop, continue. So again, you can have 3 slides within this using a collaborate board, which is again like Padlet, basically post-it notes. People write an answer. It is posted anonymously to the students, but in the back end, and I think Rich Boakes has asked about an anonymity from the forum previously, you will see who has put see who has put what. Now, it does rely on them using their real name. If they add Mickey Mouse, you are, again, at a loss. But I think a lot of these tools outside of Moodle suffer that kind of potential problems. But again, what you might want to do is set up a code of practice for using this within your teaching and suggest that the students don't use their names, but what you might use is their user ID. So if someone comes to you with a question going, I really didn't get this, or I need help with this, you're not quickly and easily tying them together with the data that's in Nearpod, but you can find it if you need to know what they put to have that kind of discussion going forward. So within Nearpod, there are lots of different bits of content you can add. You can post videos, you can create slides. So again, you can create PowerPoint-like headers, images, text, and stuff. You can add URL web links, PDFs, slideshows, which again is where you'd upload a whole load of images and the student can look at those around a subject. And I put this in the Nearpod, although Nearpod itself is maybe an intermediate level tool. These are the very beginner sort of elements of using it, which again do translate very easily into doing them in Moodle as well. It's just if you want it to be a self-contained box, you could add a few different bits of content within Nearpod and embed that within your Moodle site. There are also activities, and this is where we get into the much more in-depth level knowledge checking rather than just posing information to them, with things like time to climb, which are like the Kahoot fast-paced activity for questioning. You have a quiz, which is a much slower, sedate question. It's a bit more like a poll, but it has a right or wrong answer, where there is the poll also that allows for that. So as I've said here, the open-ended and quizzes may hit an intermediate type of need, whereas an advanced one would be to use the collaborate board and the Flipgrid time to climb types options as well. Again, I'm not going to go into any more detail today just because of time, but if you are interested, please do let me know, and I'm more than happy to discuss that with you further. Some people like gamification and that quiz element to add some fun to sort of the live side of what you're doing. And with that, we have now got Vivox on a 3-year site license, but Kahoot is the big named brand within that, which we have free access using a Google login, where you get limited to, I think it's 50 connections, and other bits that you don't get, certain question types you can't use. But again, for free, it's a very powerful tool. So you can use that for there. However, we do have a site license for Vivox for 3 years. This is where I'm going to do a bit of a knowledge check, but a gamification side of it as well. So if you go to vivox.app and go to 132.539.139, open the poll now. What is the most common colour of toilet paper in France? Now, this is a great knowledge check for Mike. Was he listening to me first time round? So we did this earlier on in the week. Does Mike remember? He can make a vote and join in the quiz.
Am I listening now? That's the bigger question.
Pardon?
Am I listening now? That's the bigger question.
I've known you long enough that I'm not offended anymore. So I can see at the top left, I've had 8 people sort of log into the VVox sort of session. 6 have answered. I'd maybe give a couple more seconds to make sure people know how long we've got left. So 7 of 10 people are joining. And last 1, 2, and we're closing the poll. It closes that. It pulls in the options of what people have put. And the correct answer is pink. Pink apparently is the most common colour of toilet paper in France. Henry VIII introduced which tax in England in 1535? How good is your history? How sure are you of what Henry VIII used to do? So we're getting a sort of a fun, very quick response. And again, I'm doing very flippant questions for today's session. You could ask much deeper questions around your subject to check people are engaged. Or you could ask, again, things that might be to do with well-being and how people are supported, depending on what you're doing. Because, again, the good bit is, as you see, it's anonymous, and you can then sort of make sure that people are happy where we are. So in 3, 2, 1. Beard tax gets the highest vote, and you'd be correct. He taxed beards back in 1535. Today, I'd be fine. Mike's looking a bit like he's going to have to pay me some money later on. So what I'd like to get from you now in a different way of using VVox within a PowerPoint is this is a word cloud. So what word or maybe 1 or 2 words most sum up your experience of student engagement? And I know that's a very, very broad subject and a very different way for everyone. But if you can add 1 or 2 words. Now, with the word cloud at the moment, there is no option for sentences. It is singular words. So some people use hyphens to do like, say, student engagement or something. But otherwise, if you try and do I think this and, the I, the think, and the and all that would be separate words within the word cloud. If you do add something into the option before I close it, you're also able to delete answers. So again, where you've got a word within the sort of screen, there's a little cross next to it, so you can still remove one if you want to. I take Rich's point about the potential for student IDs being a problem. If people are happy to give their name, obviously that would be preferable, because, like you say, you build up a much more personal relationship with them. And again, what we are trying to do is find ways, especially where we are at distance, to build that community and belonging feeling. I think for certain things, they may be a little more reticent to use their real name, and again, it's just that idea of if you use a student ID, you can still tie it back to them. But yes, they do, I appreciate, become a faceless name and number in a sea of everything else. So if you can get them to engage on that level, yes, always try and get them to use their real names or what they like to be identified with, so that you know and can have that conversation and make them feel part of what you're doing. So in 3, 2, 1. This can take a little while to bring through because obviously it's pulling it in. So here we are. What word most sums it up? Confidence, motivation, collaboration, fun, interactivity, attendance. So it's very, very different experience from everyone. So some people are very confident with it and some people have a very poor. Obviously, the biggest one there would be varied. Now, because everyone's put essentially a single word that no one else has put, what we don't have is one word getting bigger. However, it is dynamic. If everyone had done confidence, that word would appear as a much larger picture within that word cloud. But again, because everyone's got essentially the same level of understanding, they're all the same size. So how can we conduct knowledge checks with VVox at a beginner level? We can use the PowerPoint plugin, which can be found in Apps Anywhere. Once you've created a meeting inside of VVox, and we are looking at ways to hopefully make that easier going forward, you can then just start building your questions inside PowerPoint, and I'll show you that back end in just a second from the PowerPoint side of things. An intermediate one, well, you can use the native VVox interface to do more in-depth discussions and create other polls and quizzes. No, there is not a Google Slide plugin at the moment, and there is also not one for whatever the Mac version is. I can't remember. Someone asked about this morning. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, there isn't one for that either. It is at the moment. It is only with Keynote. Thank you, Rich. It is only with PowerPoint. However, they are constantly changing things. Before the session started, they'd added 3 more live features that I had to learn very quickly this week. So they are constantly changing it. So again, if Google Slides is a big thing for us, Keynote is a big thing for people, we can put it to them and they will put it to their developers and see if they can make that a feature as well. I can't promise that. I don't work for them. But what I can say is they are very, very good at listening and trying to prioritize what works for their clients. And especially now we're paying the next 3 years for it, we would hopefully be able to really make that case. In an advanced level, there's ways you could use the chat feature as a class discussion tool, and again, potentially outside of the class as well. Within VVox, you can also do a survey, which is basically an asynchronous poll. So again, create a start, stop, continue, a few questions which can be marked, and you can, like Mike would say, use that as an activity. But again, it doesn't at the moment tie to Moodle in that respect. So before I show you the back end of VVox, Mike, anything you want to jump in and say at the moment? Are you?
We talked about I talked about the participation report in Moodle a little while ago, just to show which students have engaged with which activities. I just wanted to show you what that looks like, but I just want to find a unit that hasn't got. Yeah, that's fine. So can I just share the screen, my screen, a second, Tom?
Yeah, you take it back.
Great stuff, thank you. As I said, knowledge checks are a good way to kind of have a metric around engagement, some actual kind of feedback from students. But if you want to see just what students have clicked on to make sure whether they're engaging or not, if you go to the cog icon on any Moodle module and then more, so this could be the talk lecture materials if it were in a book. If you go to reports and course participation, we're bubbling some of these reports a bit higher to make them a bit more visible. So this might be one that we'll do. So if I want to see who's had a look at this reading list, for instance, this could be the recorded lecture, and I want to see which students have accessed it. If I press go next to that activity, I get no one has. But it would show me yeses and nos next to the students that have had a look at that resource and how many times they've had a look as well. So you can easily see which students aren't engaging. So it'll be quite useful when you start delivering things online. Okay, thanks, Tom.
Take that back. With that nice little jump off, rather than finish the slides first and get back to VVox, here is VVox. This is the back end of VVox. Again, I'm not going to show you too much around it because we did a session on it this morning, which will be available soon. And again, feel free to contact me later. But just to say, you can see here where I've got the results that have come through from the questions I've just asked. And you can see it's there 3 times. It's because we did the session earlier in the week. When I refreshed my PowerPoint and we reran it, it didn't overwrite the data. It just brought them in again here. So it will just keep stacking the data if you need it to. As I mentioned, there is also the native VVox presentation side, which is outside of PowerPoint and used in that way. If you go back to the app, someone's asked 28 minutes here, is this thing on? Now it really is. So you could use this to get people to post questions. Again, if you're still in the app, please feel free to post something now. And what you can do is you can display it by the most likes, so how many thumbs up it's been given, or by most recent of what's coming in at that point. The nice bit about using most liked is students can post questions while you're teaching, and you could then get to them at the end and filter the top 3 for that session and try and answer those, because the students would upvote what you're doing. Within that as well, you also have the ability to run the questions. Now, again, because these have been run already, I have the option to rerun them. So if I reran that, it pushes it to your device. As a knowledge check, how many people were listening from the first time we ran this within here. And this is where I'm going to be able to demonstrate to you the gamification side of it. So rather than doing it directly in PowerPoint, although you can, because you could essentially click the button in the back end later, once everyone has answered that is going to answer, so in 3, 2, 1, close that poll. What I can now do is show you the correct answer. Everyone was listening, thanks very much. But I can now show the leaderboard. So what we can do is it pushes to your device, and you can see, oh, I'm in 6th place because I haven't answered any questions. It'll show you where you are. So again, it's a more, I don't like using the word professional because I think it's a very professional piece of software. But in some respects, people levy Kahoot as being childish in how it looks, the music and all the rest of it behind there. Again, it's a very powerful tool, and I don't want to belittle it because I think it has a whole lot of value for a lot of people. But this is providing us with that same sort of idea of being able to do chat, to be doing quizzing, to be doing polling, which is why we went with this over Kahoot, which again, cost being certain parts of it as well. But I felt this had a lot more features that allow us to do different question types. I saw a question come in from Rich. I don't know if I need to answer it directly at the moment, but
let's have a look.
It's very easy to create a poll. I can create one there, and I also think, no, I can't create one on the fly, but if I create one in the dashboard, so again, if Mike was presenting this, I could be working away in the dashboard, creating questions for him around what people are asking. Obviously, that relies on having 2 people to present, and most people only have enough time to spread themselves very thinly anyway. But you can create a new poll and go from there. With the question and answer, it's on at the moment. If I tick it, it's now off. It will have disappeared from your device. And you can turn it back on again, and it's live, but I can also moderate. So this is where I get that kind of like knowledge check, but participation idea, is you could leave moderation on and essentially leave it open for the students to put messages in. I can then choose what to publish. Again, I can choose to do them all very quickly. So what I might do is have a whole list from my students, skim down it, check for no swear words. If everyone's okay, I then publish it. If I then realize that one slipped through the cracks and it's like, oh, greetings, oh, I didn't mean to let that go through, I just can click on it, send it to archive, and it's all very live and dynamic, and you'll be noticing it changing on your screen as I click it. And the last bit there as well is, like I say, the surveys. So again, I can create a survey, add in my questions, one, two, three. Again, I can mark them as right or not, but once I'm done, I start that. So again, in your app, you'll notice that the clipboard icon on the far right has got an orange dot on it, and it now has that there, which I could leave open for the week to get people to feedback around anything there. Now, let me find the PowerPoint again. So how easy are questions and responses to manage if you're doing 20 classes in 3 days? Well, what you can do, there's a few ways of managing this, and again, we can maybe have this chat slightly later, but just to say, you could create multiple meeting boxes depending on your subject, so it gets split between them, so you could manage them in different meetings. They don't all have to be in one. What happens in 5 weeks? I have 20 polls per week. Again, it depends on how you're managing that. Mike, I see a hand going up.
I was just going to say, I'm going back to Andy Clegg's sweet shop analogy, that you probably don't want to use this every week in every session because students will get very bored with it very quickly. Use it sparingly and use different things. If you use the same thing again and again, they'll get bored. So vary it up, and then you won't be quite so overloaded with how much data you're capturing.
Exactly that. The last part of the first question there as well, it's how easy is it to use the data afterwards? You can download the data as an Excel document after each session. if you wanted, you could then clear out the data and have it fresh for the next time, but you just keep the reports from each session. Again, this is something we can, if you're interested, sign up, have a play, and we can have a discussion about this, because like I said, we have a site license for it, so anyone can sign up. You go to vvox.com, sign in with your @port address, you'll automatically be enrolled into it, and we are looking at getting an even better integration going forward with them.
I've got a really interesting question from Frank. I'd really like to kind of relay, if that's okay.
Yes, no, please.
Frank was asking when would we recommend doing.
I don't know if that's Mike gone or if it's me gone. Mike is gone. Frank, if you're here, feel free to post the question into the direct chat and I will try and answer it. I will wait till Mike returns and finish up with these last few slides while I wait for him to get back. But ask yourself what you're trying to achieve and find the tool that helps answer that question. And like Mike mentioned just before he did disappear, what is it you're trying to do? And it's that sweet shot bit. What bits pick and choose to make it work for you? My computer is also quite slow. Apologies. Find a way to vary activities to allow students the capacity to process and engage with the materials. What I think this for me means is when you are presenting, and like Mike sort of alluded to there, is maybe change up each week and rotate. So VVox would be every sort of first, fourth, sixth week. You know, it's not used every single time. It's used for a certain thing within that. I'm also conscious of the idea that you don't want to throw 500 different bits of software at them and they then go, which one do you use? I don't remember what I'm using which week. It's trying to give them a variety of choice. And again, this could come down to co-creation. If you give them ideas of how you're going to present this, what works for your students, and what can you then transfer and build as you go. Equally, it's from the paper I read about this, where this came from, it came essentially from the fact that people talk like we are doing now without any engagement at all. So it may be as simple as adding a single poll or adding images into certain activities to make it more engaging with the material and getting them to allow them to process the material in different ways. Where possible, try these with colleagues first. Get used to it, build up your confidence, because again, when you're familiar with something, you're more confident with the foibles and the bits that go wrong, and you can try and plow through. It does mean, again, a little bit of time to test them, but if it's something that you've seen through this week that you'd like to try, then you do have that ability to work with the other colleagues. Apologies, Mike leaving as it threw me. I think from all my years of working with many different colleagues in across subject matter and across disciplines, is the idea that people think one thing is going to fix something for them. I remember we were on Blackboard. I had an academic who was like, my son uses Moodle at Havant College. We need Moodle. It's going to fix everything. It's amazing. Blackboard's terrible. What happened was we got Moodle and he found other problems. Every system will have a problem somewhere along the line, and it's what you do and how you work through those. It's making compromise in certain bits, and just make sure that you understand that every system has a flaw. I appreciate we're now at the end of time, not in the large scheme of things. The world has not completely ended, but we are at the end of the session. Does anyone have any questions? Anything they'd like to ask? If there is nothing else, then I will stop the recording and say, please do. I think you're quite right, Rich. And as I kind of said there, using lots of different things every other week is going to be maybe troubling. to certain people to try and keep up with where you are. I think it's a question of picking one or two that work for you for what you're trying to achieve that fit with that. I think with the blended approach, we can be a little bit more flexible, where you may not use Nearpod for teaching directly, but if you use it and embed it within the Moodle site, they don't realize they're using another system. It's kind of where you get them to do activities in certain ways. Does the student always know they're changing between the system when answering a Google poll over a Moodle quiz? All right, the interface, yes, does look different, but for them, they're answering questions. So I fully appreciate if you're trying to use Padlet and Vivox and Nearpod, and again, all these audience response systems, there is that element of they are all different, they interact differently, but you will hopefully find what works for you and take you forward. But again, I'm more than happy to have that kind of conversation with anyone and within teams. Thank you very much.